Psychological side of things was something I started looking at, and I went on an NLP course, which turned out to be quite fortuitous and also coincidental for an event later on. But NLP, for those of you who don't know, or even those of you who do know, in my mind is the study of what's successful, how people think, how people do things well. There's a lot of stuff about you know, sales and marketing and business and stuff like that. Just think of it as how to think better and how to communicate better. Okay. So I did that. I was continually talking to my consultant and his registrar to see if I could improve things, do things, mess with their protocol to see if I could change things. First 2 cycles, second cycle, first cycle, second bit of it, it was 5-week cycle. So for my tumour, 3 days of cisplatin and doxorubicin. I think they call that the Red Devil. Something along those lines. Cisplatin is basically a platinum-based drug, so injecting heavy metals into your body. Long-term effects: congestive heart failure, or the increased risk of congestive heart failure, and cancer. There you go. So the medicine you're taking is more likely to give you cancer. And I asked the oncologist about this. So, let's worry about now. Okay. So cracked on, second cycle, a couple of little interesting things happened there. I kept the nurses on their toes. I had what was known as an extravasation, which is basically, I had to sit for several days with a cannula in, a needle into my vein. The nurses didn't have a clue how to make this comfortable. They wanted to put it right over my wrist joint so that I couldn't bend my wrist. Every time I got up to push my hand out of the chair, I'd end up bending the tube. There were other places I wanted to put it, but they wouldn't put it there. Okay. I ended up manufacturing a little splint out of one of those little lollipop sticks that you put in so that I didn't bend my tube. This is all stuff I'm doing myself. So I was really quite surprised at that. It would happen numerous times. Other people, their things coming out. I was in the ward one night and there was blood spraying everywhere because someone's needle had come out, stuff like that. So some nice scenes. The extravasation was basically the chemo leaking out between the needle and my veins. It wasn't actually going into my vein, it was going into the surrounding tissues. I was on the phone to a friend and I was like, oh, my arm's looking a bit funny. I was like, blah, blah, blah. Wow, and it was just blowing up. I've never seen the nurses move so quick. It was like bugger. And they had literally all the nurses around me trying to sort it out. Because essentially, some of the chemos are so dangerous that it would have just eaten my flesh away. Okay, but luckily it wasn't one of those. So care of your cannula in there, really, really important when you're going on there. And these are things you don't really get told when you're in, so it's worth knowing. Other than that, fine. We got a new scan at the end of the second cycle. Not much change. Because I'd thrown up violently on my first scan, when they put the contrast in to see where the blood is in the tumour and stuff like that. They didn't give it to me second time round. I said, give it to me, I don't care if I throw up, the scan's useless without it. No, we'll just take the scan without it. Get the report. Couldn't make any comparison with the last one because there was no contrast. Why do it? So then it was panic. Chemo's not working because they hadn't seen any change. Are we going to give you any other chemo? Can we get you to see the surgeons? This, that and the other. Went to see the surgeons. The surgeons, very compassionate. The neuro crew, they had a cosmetic surgeon there, all sorts, and they were lovely. They explained a little bit more about where my tumour was. This is a view from the top of the skull. So if you slice that bit off there and you look down from above, the sphenoid bone is the green bone across the middle there. That's where my tumour is. Not entirely sure exactly where. It's in lots of places across there. And if you look at it, this is from underneath. So if you look up through the mouth, Again, you see the bottom side of it. It's often known as a butterfly bone because from certain views it looks just like a butterfly. Now, the blessing in disguise of where my tumour was I had my carotid artery going through it, my basilar artery going through it. I had numerous nerves from my brain going through to my eyes going through it, including the two main optic nerves, which meant surgery was a total no-go. But boy, am I glad about that. Because if you imagine getting a tin opener to my head, that's how they would have had to deal with it. So I'm pretty glad that didn't happen. My oncologist has mentioned that they had someone with a very similar tumour to myself and they were able to operate. He actually, bless his cotton socks, 4.5 years down the line has said, looking at you now, I wonder whether that was the best way forward. Okay, so the thoughts of finally trying to penetrate his head. We had an interesting relationship. We get on well, but it's, you know, there's opinions don't meet in the middle. So surgery was a no-go. We saw something on telly about surgery up through the nose, and because we didn't have a clear understanding where the tumour was, we knew it was near the pituitary gland, and they talked about being able to go up through the nose. You can get to the pituitary gland that way, so we arranged an appointment. I think it was in St Thomas's down south. I can't remember, it wasn't St Thomas's, it was. Went all the way down there, basically to get told no surgery, what your doctors are telling you is fine. I was okay with that. It was a bit of a shock for my wife who had some hope. Why the hell did we go all the way down there just for that? I thought it was going to be some good news. Anyway, they were trying to help, and I was grateful but a bit disappointed, obviously, at the outcome at the time. I'd done my research on radiotherapy. Some of you may have heard of proton beam therapy. I was fortunate enough to have friends who live out in America and who were able to pull some strings and get a diagnosis from the MD Anderson, which is one of the foremost sarcoma hospitals in the world. And they had suggested proton beam therapy. I'd also been in contact, a friend of mine whose dad died of a similar tumour to mine. Actually, it was a tumour from his treatment that he died of, the first tumour they treated, but he died of the secondary tumour due to the treatment. He put me in touch with Sarcoma UK. Now, Sarcoma UK, a fantastic charity doing loads of work on behalf of sarcoma and raising it, and they have a lovely forum. However, unfortunately, we fell out because basically a couple of us were exploring alternative options, and at the time Sarcoma UK was very much only going to discuss conventional things, so I was like looking for help and support on all of this, and I thought they would be able to provide that, but it became too distressing for everyone involved, so we agreed and parted ways. But if you're looking for help on any conventional medicine for cancer, there will be a charity for it, I'm pretty sure. So go and look up what you can. Be armed with as much information as possible so that you can make informed decisions, because that's essentially what I was doing and what I believe I have done. The bit that turned around, saved my life. Third cycle, I met a guy called Bob Welford. He unfortunately is not alive anymore. He was, I think, in his 60s when I saw him. He lived for a couple of years after that. But he came across a book which he was living by, and he was doing very well. And it's that book there, it'll be on the table to have a look at the end. Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life. Okay. This book is what set me forward on my path of how I was going to attack cancer. Okay. This guy, briefly, was I think a psychologist or a psychiatrist. He was doing an experiment, some scans. They didn't have a guinea pig. He volunteered, found out he had a brain tumour. Went through all the conventional treatment, went away, but it came back. He asked his oncologist, what can I do to help myself? I actually asked my oncologist on the very first meeting, what can I do to help myself, before I'd read this book, almost to the identical words. The replies were almost identical. Nothing. Just go with the treatment. Okay. At the time, I'm stuffing sugar, refined flours, takeaway foods, alcohol, not sleeping, i.e. I was staying up late. I was doing loads of things that actually, when you go on any cancer website, Cancer Research UK will tell you, are increasing your risk of cancer. So why the hell am I not being told that actually changing some of those things could help get me better? Because surely it's got to play some part. If my body is fit and healthy, then it's got a better chance of fighting the cancer. But that's not how, when I went into hospital, the medical model was working. MD Anderson, which, well, in America everything's private now anyway, from what I can gather, they actually got together with Dr. David Servan-Schreiber and implemented his program in full. They had chapel rooms put in, they had rooms for relatives and friends to stay over, they implemented the diet, they provided psychiatric support, psychological support. They've gone the full hog. I don't have access to their results and how they're doing, but I would imagine they are doing better. Just even going through the process, knowing all of that's in place, how to deal with that thing hanging around your neck. I used to liken it to Harry Potter films. You all know He Who Must Not Be Named. Shh, don't say his word, Voldemort. Shh, don't say it. Well, I'd be telling my friends I got cancer. You got what? You've got what? The C word? No, nobody would ever mention it. Are you all right, Mike? How's your head? Oh, you mean my cancer? And it's like, people are really awkward about it. What for me, my saving grace was being able to talk about it openly and not bottle all those feelings up. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but one of the things I read was, don't fester on things. I'd festered on enough in life, and potentially that's maybe what had helped lead me there. So yeah, I cracked on with that book. I changed my diet. I refused to eat hospital food. I managed to get my oncologist's agreement to this on the basis that I was throwing up every time he came into the ward. So I bludgeoned the nurses into agreeing I was well and fit and healthy. So I said, look, I'll go and do it. I'll get it. You're busy enough. Blah, blah, blah. So that was great. I dealt with my food. Michelle's parents, my parents would cook away, bring it in. I'd store it in the fridge. I'd have my own sneaky feasts, and it was great. And I started doing more exercise, so I'd do sneaky little interval sessions with my drip stand. I'd go to the back stairway and just do stair intervals. By this stage, just walking up the stairs was enough to... So I kept moving. I did little circuits in the TV room. At the time, I'd been doing CrossFit. Some of you may have heard about it. It's a big fitness movement in America that's gone worldwide. And basically I spurred my thoughts on with that. I'm going to get back to CrossFit. I'm going to get back to being a squash player. I'm going to get back to living a long, healthy life. And that's what I did. I thought all of that. I had my food, took everything in control. Good news was, next scan after the 4th cycle had shown some improvement in terms of the density of the tumour, but in the actual, they thought there'd been some death within it, but the actual size hadn't changed. So not good news there. During this time, my search for radiotherapy, proton beam therapy, I'll be as quick as I can here. Basically, that's only funded for special cancers. I don't believe we have proper facilities here in this country yet. There are some in Europe and there's some in America. The reason it's really good is because it's really incredibly accurate. And with tumours, you may know that radiotherapy is dangerous to healthy tissue as well as the tumorous tissue. So you want to get as little of the healthy tissue as possible. With proton beam therapy, you come to the edge of this table and it would maybe go 1 millimetre over, whereas with the next best it may be 2 or 3 millimetres over. So quite a big difference there. So I'm gunning for this, like, you know, and it's like, and my radiotherapy consultant, if that's what you call them, I'm never really too sure about that, he was being very evasive about it, wouldn't talk to me, and I wanted to be prepared ahead of time, but it was very, very difficult to get appointments with people down the line. Now, I understand I might be unusual in wanting to plan all of that ahead, and maybe not other patients are like that, but I was, and there wasn't the facility for that to happen. I collared his registrar whilst I was having my mask made. So this is the start of me having the mask made. They were very kind. The staff down here were lovely. Let me take the camera in. They wouldn't let me take the, no, I couldn't take the mask anymore because at that stage I was still having radiotherapy, but they let me take the cast home, which was really nice, which I still got that. The reason you have to have this done is because obviously you're moving around when radiotherapy, they're just trying to shoot accurate beams at your head. It's not a good idea, so you sit there. For me it was quite cool, for other people a bit spooky, I imagine, if you're claustrophobic and stuff like that. But anyway, proton beam therapy, the registrar admitted it was the best radiotherapy I could get, so I confronted the consultant. This happened to be in the middle of the ward. And we were both hackles up. And I sat there, yeah, have you sent this in yet? We haven't heard back from the proton beam therapy. And eventually, and he said, well, yeah, proton beam therapy, but I don't think you should have it. Why not? You're saying it's the best, but you're telling me I shouldn't have it. Why not? You're not explaining things to me. And he was getting quite angry himself at this stage and in front of everybody, because I don't think it's going to work. Ah, cool, sorry people. Right, okay, is that how you tell all your patients that? So you can imagine I was none too happy with that. Maybe I'd forced him into a corner, but maybe if he talked to me beforehand, we wouldn't have had that. So anyway, the proton therapy advisory group very kindly arranged for me to have a second opinion with someone who was also a tomotherapy expert, and this was down in Cambridge. So we trooped off down there and he was great, absolutely fantastic. And by the end of it I was convinced that actually the tomotherapy was a better radiotherapy for me, basically because my tumour didn't have defined edges. So having accuracy, it was like fuzzy at the edge, a bit like cotton wool, as opposed to the paper edge. So they're going to have to go way past anyway to make sure they got it all. And the tomotherapy was actually going to be better for that than the proton beam therapy. I'd be able to stay in this country. Job's a good one. Chemotherapy finishes. I get a blood transfusion. Boy, does that stuff work. I'd been going, Sue Gardner, who runs the gym in Brighton, Try It Gym, a couple of you may know her, she'd been letting me come in and train during my chemo sessions, and I would get on the life cycle and I would manage level 1 out of 20 for maybe 10 minutes. I had a little circuit I would do, 10 bodyweight squats, 10 press-ups, 10 sit-ups, nothing too strenuous. I had to take a couple of minute rest after each set of 10. Took this blood transfusion, well hey, 30 minutes at level 3, did my 3 sets straight through. Oh, now I know why you do it, Lance. It's like it works. And I found this out halfway through, and I had a sneaky word with my registrar. I said, any chance of a blood transfusion when I finish this, because I don't want to spend months like getting back to fitness. And whether he took that on board or not, I doubt it. I think it was probably because I did actually need it. I got one anyway, which was a help, because it meant I could walk all the way up the stairs without stopping for a breather. The radiotherapy meeting. So this is where I parted paths with conventional medicine. For those of you who know anything about radiotherapy, it was like they were looking to give me 60 plus grays of radiotherapy over 30 sessions, but my optical nerve could take 54 at a maximum, but there was still a risk there of it being permanently damaged. So the question was, with the tomotherapy, they could actually go round the optic nerve and shape it. Fantastic technology that they could do this and give that plus a little bit 54 and the rest of the tumour 60. The question for me was, if I did that, part of the tumour's not getting the maximum dose they can give it, okay, but if I go greater, I'm increasing the likelihood of blindness. Okay, so what kind of blindness are we talking about? Partial vision, whatever? No, total. Because basically my optical chiasm, the crossover of the optic nerves, was smack bang in the middle of the tumour. Okay, cool. This is like a week before my treatment is due to start that I'm getting this information. Okay, so looking back on it, I was under tremendous pressure there to sign this stuff, and I'm finding out, you know, essentially in my head, you know, information that is impacting the rest of my life. Now it turns out my consultant didn't actually think I had that much life left anyway, but even so, it was like this was massive. Also, something I've been told by the doctor in Cambridge, but not the one here, was that my pituitary gland would be totally destroyed because it's basically sitting right on top of the tumour. Okay, pituitary gland, for those of you who don't know, is the master control gland for all the hormones in the body. Okay, so some of you may be on hormone treatment like thyroxine or something like that. You will know what the effects of just being on one hormone will be like. Imagine being on all of them every day for the rest of your life, taking a set of pills. Oh, it's fine, we've got the endocrinologist there, he's ready, he'll be fine. We do this all the time, it's not a problem. I had a good friend who emigrated to Australia. He was on thyroxine for a couple of years and he was up and down. His weight was there. His mood was up, down. It wasn't a walk in the park. So that scared the living daylights out of me. The blindness, I thought, I was quite blasé about it to start off with. I got back to the gym. We'd obviously had a chat through with this. At this stage, I didn't realise that Michelle was rightly terrified about the whole thing. I got back and I was telling Colin Gardner, who is co-partner of the gym, so he's a cyclist. I said, oh, we'll be doing duathlon tandem rides together. You can be my seeing partner and we'll get in the Olympics. So I was like really living it up, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to get there. A sudden thought sprung to my head there. I've actually seen disabled athletes, so the Paralympians train. There was no way I would have ever made the Olympic squad. They work far too hard physically, far too hard. They're extremely talented as well. But it was a nice idea at the time. It all kicked home on Monday morning. Michelle had gone to work and it was the first time I was on my own since I'd signed the papers for the treatment, and I'm sat there and I went to the shops and I got about 10 yards down the shops and I started thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this that easy if I'm blind. Okay, guide dog, yeah, cool, stick. Will I be able to drive? Don't think so. I'd like to try, but no. And then it's like, shit, I don't want to be blind. I don't want to be blind, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be depressed. And I sat stewing. And stewing. Tuesday I stewed some more. On actually another lifesaver, unfortunately I can't remember his name, but it was another guy who had died whilst I was in hospital. You get to meet a lot of people who die when you're on a cancer ward. He told us about Northumberland Cancer Support Group. And they basically, you can go and see them. They've got alternative therapies going on, they've got people you can talk to, they've got literature, go and see them. Tuesday, I finally remembered this lot, and they had a meeting that night. Michelle, get home, I need you to drive me to the hospital. And Michelle, as she did for everything, was straight there, drove me there. These guys were fantastic. Northumberland Cancer Support Group, I spent my first year after this raising money for them. They were absolutely awesome. I sat down, immediately knew I was a new person. Right, okay, the alternative therapies here today are this, this and this, and Andy's here doing EFT. Mike, you need to go and see Andy. No, someone else go. No, you're new here today, you need to go and see him. Maybe she could tell by my demeanour, the cold sweat on my face, the cold clammy handshake, the tenseness that I wasn't on top form there. EFT, for those of you who haven't heard it, emotional freedom technique. Kooky as hell. Tap, 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 tap. I'm not a bad person, I'm not a bad person. Tap, 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 tap. But I'll tell you what, I'm a convert. This guy sat me there for an hour. The coincidence was he had been one of my NLP instructors as well. Okay, so I'd seen him before and I'd seen him do this at EFT and I thought, not going there. Anyway, at this stage I'm willing to try anything. And he basically said, what's the problem? And he went through this process and it's a fantastic process. He's very good at what he does and he did a lot of free work for cancer people there and he was actually trying to get this authorised for use as an alternative therapy alongside others that are currently used. And an hour later I came out and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was as calm as I'd been throughout the whole process. Now some people say about the EFT that it's, oh well, you were just maybe distracted or whatever. Yeah, maybe I was, but I tell you what, I've never been that calm, not in the face of that type of pressure and the decision I was making. Okay, and I made the best decision I could and I'm really pleased with that decision that I made. And that decision was to phone the hospital up and say I wasn't going to have the radiotherapy. Okay, I went in to see Dr. Kelly and he said, why aren't you having it? I said two things, blindness, pituitary gland, you're going to knack me. I've done some research into alternative therapies, I'm going to take my chances. He says, you're wasting your time. I sort of understand why. I don't understand the pituitary gland, but yeah, I can sort of understand the blindness side of things. Such a shame, because it's a very interesting case. Best of luck. What did I decide to do? I'd done my research. My criteria were that there had to be loads of stuff about it. It had to be written up in books. It had to be on the internet. It had to be something that wasn't stupidly expensive or really wacky, because I have this very strong feeling that if there's money involved, there's a conflict of interest wherever you are. And just to put this one in your heads, do you really think that any pharmaceutical country wants us to prevent cancer? Because if we do, we stop their income stream. Cancer pharmaceuticals are a multi-billion-pound industry. Okay, that is extremely powerful. People have been killed for far less. Okay, everything in this society is based on treating symptoms of problems, whether it's medical, whether it's office work-based problems, whether it's problems in the house. We create a problem, we get symptoms from it, we deal with the symptoms, it creates a revenue stream. Great, the economy goes on, or not, depending on which government you're under at the time or whatever. But essentially, we are allowing ourselves to be made sick. Okay, we don't have to go down that road. That's why I'm doing this talk and why I hope to do more. And this is the sort of stuff I help with my clients and the people who come to my classes is all aimed at prevention, because a lot of this stuff you can knock on the head before it becomes a problem. So the approach I chose was the Budwig protocol. I had been following the approach in anti-cancer. I'll just read out a quick summary of the anti-cancer approach, which served me well through chemo, and to be honest, I felt better. I think after the third cycle, obviously I'd had problems with the chemo, but eating my own food was heaven, having that brought in. I'm not sure how well kitted out the hospitals would be if everyone decided to do that, but if you're ever in that situation, it's worth thinking about, because hospital food is atrocious. There's no nutritional value in it, and they'll fill you chock full of sugar, which, as you'll find out in a bit, is one of the things we need to have less of. Anti-cancer, a new way to fill your plate: at least 50% vegetables. Fruits, vegetables, vegetable proteins, e.g. lentils, peas and beans. 10 to 15% whole grains, rice, quinoa, bulgur wheat, etc. Healthy fats: olive oil, organic grass-fed butter, flax, herbs and spices. Optional: organic meat, wild fish, organic eggs, organic dairy products. So that's dietary stuff. Now, you go back pre-World War I and probably after that, that's pretty much what we would have been eating anyway. Yeah, you may have had a few more potatoes and stuff, that the proportions may have differed. But that stuff, cooked from scratch, is what we should be eating. Okay. I know we'll have objections to all of this and stuff like that, and that's one of the things that it's my job to try and help people with. The other prescription: physical activity every day. We've all heard the news. Sitting down, now they're saying it kills us. I've seen some pretty convincing research on that. Aches and pains don't happen because we're moving about, they happen because we're sitting down. And on that note, just really quickly, I want you all to stand up. Come on, quick, 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 stand up. Little run. Arms up in the air. Okay, out to the side. And for those of you who feel able, don't bash your heads on the chairs, just round down, touch your toes, nice and easily. Okay, all right, you can sit down again now. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a little while. Physical activity every day, mental calm and emotional peace, meditation, relaxation, etc. We know that stress has a lot to do with disease. So that in a nutshell. Oh yeah, one more: environment. Eliminate or minimise chemicals. So what are the causes of cancer in the first place? One of them might be certain chemicals. We know cigarette smoke, asbestos, lots of other things out there, probably quite a lot of things that we're not really sure of. There are a lot of things out on the internet that people are talking about. BPA, which is a form of plastic used to line tins, has been linked with plastic. Microwaving certain plastics makes the plastic more likely to be carcinogenic. Even the way we cook our food, so roasted, high temperature treated food, particularly wheat-based products and meat-based products, they form, again, carcinogens, acrylamides I think they're called, and basically the structure of the food itself changes under high temperature, and our body doesn't deal with it very well. Okay, so these are all the things that are out there. We tend to ignore it because it's not going to get me. I just realised how stupid I was when I sort of like looked at the statistics. At the moment, 1 in 3 people gets cancer. For blokes, it's closer to 1 in 2, and in our lifetime, they think it's going to be 1 in 2. I'm not going to get it. It's a toss of a coin. Okay. 2 of my mates, when we first got it, said to me, no disrespect, but we're hoping you're our 1 in 3. I said to them, I'm hoping that you are my 3. So that was the anti-cancer way of life. The protocol I decided to choose, Budwig protocol. Joanna Budwig was a scientist who worked for the German government in the 1950s. Okay, 1950. Just want you to remember that. Okay. Diet, pretty similar to what they're saying in the anti-cancer, with specific restrictions and additions. Organic vegetarian fruit and whole grain diet. No processed oils. That was a big thing. No processed oils. What does she mean by that? Vegetable oils, essentially. Margarines. Okay. They are processed in such a way that changes their structure, that makes them toxic to us. Dump them. Do not go anywhere near them. Spreadable butters have hydrogenated vegetable oils in them. Dump them. Get rid of them. Okay, there's an interesting picture, I didn't put it on here, where they've put butter and margarine out on a plate and left it for the ants. The ants swarmed all over the butter, wouldn't touch the margarine, because they understood it's one molecule away from plastic. Okay. Trans fats, you'll have heard of trans fats. That's basically what these margarines and highly processed vegetable oils are full of. Marks and Spencer took trans fats out of their food maybe 3 years ago, I think, out of all of their food. Joanna Budwig was saying this in 1950. Okay. The companies, the big food companies doing this stuff tried to take her to court because she was saying this stuff was causing cancer. The court threw it out because she had the evidence. She was nominated 7 times for a Nobel Prize, didn't get it, don't know why. But that was one of the things she pointed out, and she was one of the first scientists to actually start separating out the different fatty acids. You've heard of omega-3s, omega-6s maybe. I'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah, the only fats she allowed were cold pressed flax or linseed and virgin organic coconut oil. So I got on well with that. Michelle hated the coconut oil, especially when I tried to put it with conventional English food. It just didn't go. Okay, but it goes really well with Asian food. Okay, the other mainstay from the dietary point of view was cottage cheese or quark, which is a German cream cheese, blended with flax oil every day, and then you make a sort of either a sweet dessert type thing out of it, or a yogurt by adding raw honey, fruits, nuts, seed and ground flaxseed, or you can make savoury stuff. And I've actually got the books. Yeah, if people want to have a look at that afterwards, there's actually a recipe book in there showing some of that stuff in there. It sounds absolutely horrendous, but once you get used to it, it's actually quite nice, and we sort of look forward to it with our meals. So that's the food side, so not massively different. Regular sunshine. In her protocol, 40 minutes a day of sunshine. Bear in mind she was in Germany. For me, that's probably more because I come, my ancestry is Indian as well as German. And you can tell I've got a bit of a suntan. I don't get as much sun. I don't get as much vitamin D production because of my skin. From an evolutionary point of view, the further away we travelled from the hemisphere, the paler we got, so that we could manufacture vitamin D from the sun's rays. Why do we get skin cancer? Well, you dump a bunch of English people in Australia where the indigenous population is black. There's your answer. If you let yourself get burnt, again, you're asking for long-term damage. So it needs a bit of sense and control. But rickets is now a big problem for the Asian community in this country because they stayed covered up. Lack of vitamin D. Vitamin D is implicated in a whole host of other conditions as well as cancer. So if you're not getting out in the sun regularly, and well, we're in Newcastle, so that's limited at best, I would recommend a good vitamin D3 supplement. I get an organic one made from food materials from the health shop, but I can give details of that another time. So she said regular sunshine, environment, again, chemicals, toxins, electromagnetic frequencies, electromagnetic radiation. What is that? Your microwave, your phone, your base stand for the phone if you have a cordless phone, your Wi-Fi. Okay, we now have a society where we can't live with this, without this stuff. It's even on the buses. I have a client who took his daughter out of school because they introduced Wi-Fi. He was a skeptic at first, he did the research. I have about 60 research papers at home on this stuff. It's not good, okay, it's not good, but it's here to stay. Okay, so the best we can do is not stress over it and do what we can to avoid it. So get out for trips to the countryside when you can. Switch your Wi-Fi off at night. Switch anything else off that you're not using at night. Don't carry your phone on you. Don't let your kids carry it on their body either. Okay, a little snippet about phones. The SAR rating, which is the safety rating for mobile phones, is based on 20,000 US military adult heads. Okay, the SAR rating is about the heating effect of mobile phones, and it's been tested on an adult head, which has a thicker skull than children do. Okay, many children have brain cancers. I don't think there is actual evidence to suggest it is the phones at the moment, or proving that it's the phones, but it's something. Okay, there is a danger to these phones. The only thing that's been tested is the heating effect. Okay, when you put a phone on, put it on a pillow next to someone and stick them in a functional MRI scanner, this can give you a real-time view of what's going on in the brain. With the phone switched off, you'll see certain aspects of the brain lighting up. Take them out, switch the phone back on, put them back in, you'll see a whole host of other areas lighting up because that phone has been switched on. Okay, make of that what you will, but I would say minimise your mobile phone usage where you can. Okay, switch to wireless. I've totally got rid of my Wi-Fi now, and I use wired cables through the plug sockets. I can switch the Wi-Fi on when I need it to through my router homepage. This may be gobbledygook for you somewhere, but if people want to find out about that, they can email me and I'll put out a little instruction pamphlet. Switch it off at night. You don't need it. Okay, it's just messing with your head, literally.